Here we are back in the middle of the week with Exploring the Illuminati Occult. Christy, this is new.
Back. The occult's back.
The occult is back, and it's back because we also have something happening that we will discuss and analyze today. But first of all, Christy needs to mention and to thank our sponsors.
Thank you so much, Daniel Estes and Bruce Kodish. Thank you so much for your donation. And everyone who bought the book too, thank you so much. We had a lot of book sales today. Thank you.
Thank you very
much. You wrote
much.
a great article, so it's probably because of that.
Well, I mean, there is a lot of things happening today. So it's very interesting that we are doing this show. And of course, we are touching on something that will bring us back in time. But at the moment, we want to start with something that happened today, something that is opening our minds and is confirming also what I wrote in volume 9 of my confessions, which is very important and which Christy will be citing soon, together with what I wrote in volume 4 of my confessions. And then I have a lot of other books I will be citing here with me. It's important, guys. The show today is very important. This is groundbreaking news. I know that we are overshadowed by many other things. Incredible event. Trump went to the White House and very politely, of course, engaged with President Joe Biden as president-elect. The whole thing went very well. But aside from that, what's really happening on the Hill? Well, this is what is happening. And what you're going to be hearing is pretty shocking, guys. So we had another meeting of...
This joint hearing of the Subcommittee on Cybersecurity, Information Technology, and Government Innovation and the Subcommittee on National Security, the Border, and Foreign Affairs will come to order. Good morning and welcome, everyone.
Welcome.
Without objection, the chair may declare a recess at any time. And I recognize myself for the purpose of making an opening statement right now.
Okay.
Good morning and welcome to today's historic hearing, which I'm co-chairing with Mr. Grothman, whose subcommittee held an important hearing on this topic last year. I want to thank my colleagues on the Oversight Committee, including Mr. Burchett, Mr. Burleson, Ms. Luna, Mr. Moskowitz, Mr. Garcia, for their relentless drive to get answers on UAPs. They've been steadfast in demanding transparency on the sightings reported by military pilots and armed forces. Their commitment
to... so you must have heard that what's been going on. Okay, so this is what was happening on the Hill today. This is groundbreaking because, guys, what you will listen in a few seconds is pretty shocking. I mean, UFOs can be described as enigmatic and frustrating. We had, of course, whistleblower David Grush. I've talked about him in volume 9 of my confessions, and I talk about the whole reverse engineering setting the trap for this digital prison we are living in. But then also we need to know what's the position of Donald J. Trump, who is very open regarding the disclosure about all this. He's very open about anything, really. So, I mean, if everything goes as Trump has announced during his campaign, we will know everything about JFK's assassination, and confirming what I wrote in volume 11 of my confessions. We're going to know, of course, also other things. With Trump, it seems like we're going to be turning the page on many subjects. So I want to bring you forward in
for the truth.
Let's say 2-hour session in a moment of reckoning, I think, and of great importance, which happened with the arrival of Luis Elizondo, which, of course, a lot of you might have heard of. But what he says today, it's I find it very important, guys. I find it very important, and I think we need to listen to this before we can go further in the subject that we are going to be discussing today, the fallen angels of the book of Enoch. There's not only one book of Enoch, there's 3 books of Enoch. But let's see for a second, let's immerse ourselves a second in what is being said here, because it's very important and very relevant.
Intelligence community. How frequently are UAP sightings over military installations? And secondly, I suppose hypothetically, you could have incursions over just, say, regular airports. Is it obvious these incursions are more likely over military facilities than just a random airport out there?
Yes, sir. There's definitely enough data to suggest that there is certainly some sort of relationship between sensitive U.S. military installations, also some of our nuclear equities, and also some of our Department of Energy sites. There is a long historical record that some of your colleagues may have, documentation that demonstrates this. This is not a new trend. This has been going on for decades, and that information's been obfuscated, unfortunately, from folks like you in this committee. And I think that's problematic because ultimately, at the end of the day, we have a significant situation here. We have something that can enter into U.S. airspace completely with no attribution.
And how long has this been going on?
Sir, decades. And there's information that will hopefully be entered into the record.
Can you think of any possible reason why they can't release any information they have on something, say, 15 or 20 years old?
Sir, if I could echo my colleague here, Admiral Gallaudet, I think one of the big issues that we have in the intelligence community, Department of Defense, is we don't want to broadcast any potential vulnerabilities or weaknesses in our national defense systems or on intelligence collection platforms. Therefore, when you have a conversation where you address a problem for which there is no solution, it makes that a very uncomfortable conversation to have.
Okay, we'll switch to Mr. Schellenberger. The primary reason you're here today is because you published an article on the news publication that you own called Public, right? Alleging that a new unnamed government whistleblower has come forward asserting that a highly classified program exists dedicated to recovery and reverse engineering of UAP technologies. What can you give us what specific evidence you have or that your source provided you to substantiate the claims about the existence of the Immaculate Constellation program?
Well, you have the report in front of you now, so you can see it for yourself. I checked the report and I did not find it based on existing cases. It was new cases for me. I hadn't found anybody. So that answered for me that it was not obviously circular reporting, which is one of the big concerns in this space. I also had the name of the program confirmed by more than one additional source. And then of course I checked to make sure that the source was who they claimed to be.
Okay.
I should also say that when I said before it was this database, it is a much broader program than that. It also includes human intelligence, and then, as you mentioned, the retrieval and the reversal.
Any knowledge of what country these things originated in?
No, I have no idea.
Okay.
Okay, I will now recognize Mr. Burchett for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Chair Lady. I request unanimous consent to enter into the record documents provided to us regarding legacy UAP programs and psychological operations. Lou Elizondo.
So ordered.
I also want to thank my buddy Jeremy Corbell for providing us documents. And
now, this part also is interesting because you see, there's a mention of psychological operations, and in volume 11 of my confessions, I discussed how Michael Aquino himself talked about psychological operations in relation to UFOs, something that I already touched also with Stubbled. Sorry if I straighten up this camera.
I thought it was crooked.
It's crooked. Okay. Welcome to the Leo Zagami show. In the meantime, we thank our sponsors, and we would like also to have more sponsors, because the more sponsors we have, the more possibility that we not only going to stay on air, but we're going to bring you more than a show a week. This is our second show, and we are planning to keep it this way. We are basically offering you a show on a Saturday focused on the cognitive warfare and so on a geopolitical news analysis, while instead on Wednesday we focus more on the esoteric element. And there is definitely an esoteric and occult element here that we will be debating. Christy, this is from volume 9 of my Confessions, for those who haven't read it. Is 7 Steps to the Secrets of the New World Disorder, from transhumanism and immortality to Gnostic Jesus, UFOs, and insect witchcraft. Yes, this part here.
Just that paragraph?
No, this part and this.
This and that?
Yes.
Okay. In an essay for Politico entitled, "If the Government Has UFO Crash Materials, It's Time to Reveal Them," former Deputy Assistant Secretary for Defense for Intelligence, Christopher Mellon, detailed his direct involvement in delivering UAP evidence to Congress, work that ultimately led to the establishment of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO, organized to investigate and document encounters with unidentified craft, which might be extraterrestrial in origin. Mellon described his efforts to bring public attention to the existence of recorded UAP incidents involving U.S. military personnel. But despite breakthroughs in government transparency about these sightings, he argued, there's one thing the Pentagon and the intelligence community has so far not addressed, and that is whether they have had any direct contact with these objects, and whether there is truth to persistent rumors alleging that the government has been working secretly to reverse engineer the technology. Mellon personally referred 4 witnesses to AARO who claimed to know about a secret U.S. government program involving the analysis and exploitation of materials recovered from off-world craft. He knows of other sources with additional evidence. Although AARO has no legal obligation to report its findings to the public, Mellon has concluded that the public needs to know the truth. Within 2 days of the Politico essay, another online publication, The Debrief, ran a story under the headline, "Intelligence Officials Say U.S. Has Retrieved Craft of Non-Human Origin." In their well-sourced piece, journalists Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal detailed the allegations of David Charles Rouge, a former intelligence official turned whistleblower, who has provided both Congress and intelligence community inspector general with extensive classified information about deeply covert programs in possession of intact and partially intact craft of non-human origin.
Thank you very much, Christy. And of course, I will highly recommend this book to understand the connections between these retrieval programs and where we stand now with artificial intelligence, with the development of the quantum Prince of Darkness, how I defined it, the quantum computers, and of course cyber Satan in its ultimate development. This seems to be, of course, where we are heading for. So here we are in the year 2024 with this second bipartisan hearing dedicated to this subject. But we want to go deeper. We want to go deeper, you see, guys. We wanted to go deeper, and we do it by going first of all to the book of Enoch. You see, book of Enoch, the figure of Enoch is the figure of a biblical patriarch and prophet, the father of Methuselah, name that they offer me here without any disrespect, of course, a protagonist of extraordinary events. This is also the story of a book which was recognized by early Christians, but it was no longer. Just as it was recognized by the rabbinical enterprise, and then it was not recognized any longer. So what pushed them to not recognize this book any longer? Enoch appears for the first time in the book of Genesis. The authors tell us about something unusual that happened to this guy, something really unusual. Genesis 5:24 tells us that Enoch walked faithfully with God. Then he was no more because God took him away. Kind of, that's it, he went. This is quite unusual, and neither the way in which this happened nor the reason for it are really explained in detail, leaving the reader full of unanswered questions about Enoch. The writings attributed to this prophet were originally considered canon by the church, but were then excluded in the 1st century after Christ when they came together for the Council of Laodicea. And they were considered apocryphal and thus not the product of divine inspiration. However, there is still a church that recognizes them. There is still a reality that recognizes them, but is not to be found within the Western world. We need to go to a distant place in Africa. But before going there, this the fact that being removed from the corpus of the Old Testament, the writings of this antediluvian prophet that was an ancestor to Noah, the guy who put together the ark. So, and so it could have really fallen in obscurity. According to estimates based on biblical dating, Enoch would have lived in an historical period that does not accord with the period in which the tales attributed to him were written. This would justify, according to the church, the elimination of this text from the biblical canons, apart from the fact that Enoch, like all the ancient patriarchs of the church, seem to have lived very long, like 300 years or whatever. But this will, on the other hand, it's this author, the fact that we talk about them, and the fact that we talk about them in connection with the fallen angels. The fallen angels have never really been described so accurately as within the book of Enoch. The moment in which these watchers, they look to the daughters of men, they like, they fancy them, and at that point they impregnate them. And this will give birth to the Nephilim. And this will give birth, of course, to the giants. So what could have played a determining, say, a role in excluding these texts of Judaic origin, both from the church, but also from the rabbinical context? So, I mean, the book of Enoch, and like I said earlier, there is actually 3 books of Enoch, but we're talking about the original book, the first book of Enoch. The fact that this book suddenly is made to disappear, it's kind of strange, no? Don't you think, Christy? Why a biblical figure prior to Noah's flood and the son of Jared and father of Methuselah, an antediluvian period man in the Hebrew Bible who appears in the book of Genesis, where he said he's lived 365 years.
Maybe people don't want to know. They don't want that people to know about him, so they got rid of him. That's what they do.
Especially because
they change history.
They change history. The book of Enoch, you see, contains a unique material. Finally, reveals us the origins of demons and Nephilim, why some angels were, of course, with an act of rebellion, left the heavens, and an explanation of why the Genesis flood was morally necessary, and also a prophetic exposition of the 1,000-year reign of the Messiah. But the interesting thing about this book is that a copy of it was preserved among the Dead Sea Scrolls found in the Qumran caves. And as you know, this was a discovery which is rather recent, because it happened in a period of 10 years between 1946 and 1956. We talked about it previously in exploring the Illuminati Occult, which is a long series. You can find from 2023 all the old episodes. There are 50 episodes in which we really delve deep into certain topics. Now, going back to the Book of Enoch, it is part of the biblical canon used by the Ethiopian Jewish community. And this is very interesting because at the same time is also present in the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. So in Ethiopia, both the Jewish community, which is said to be descendant from when, of course, Solomon married with Queen Sheba, that was coming from there. But the fact that this two groups in Ethiopia, especially the largest of the Oriental Orthodox churches, one of the few Christian churches in Sub-Saharan Africa, is connected and reveres this book. So, I mean, it's like Judaism and Christianity almost conspire together to get rid of it. I mean, the Book of Enoch was widely read during the Second Temple period. But then, I mean, it was no longer. And the main reason for this Jewish rejection of the book, it was that it's inconsistent with the teachings of the Torah. So here we have an inconsistency with the teachings of the Torah, and at the same time, according to the church, the elimination of this text from biblical canon for another reason. And all this because the prophet had witnessed something when he returned to earth relating to unique and disturbing experiences made somewhere else. It was like he had traveled with these aliens, between brackets, these angels. And Enoch tells of his trips into the sky, of celestial militias, of angelic figures he calls watchers, and of the permission given to him by these entities to transcribe all that he had seen. The prophet seems to be an authentic chronicler, and the only one who described events in the first person, like I saw it, I heard, I was there. So it was like he was reporting. These are frequent references to the enigmatic angelical figures that seem to have accompanied him on these trips. This prophet, this Enoch, is really an unusual kind of prophet also because of the fact that he ascends into the heavens. Now he's going somewhere else. He's not staying here on earth. Not even Moses did that. Mm-hmm. So the prophet, and before Jesus, so the prophet got to know his celestial guides, being able to even report the names and responsibilities of many of them. And they, this is quoting, of course, the Book of Enoch, they made me see the captains and the chiefs of the orders of the stars. They show me 200 angels who have authority over the stars and serve the sky. They fly around planets with their wings. The angels described by Enoch do not seem to correspond, however, with the benevolent spiritual entities the church usually portrays. And so we have to understand really what is describing here. The content, the description of the fallen angels seems to, of course, bring us to maybe the main reason for the rejection from the Hebrew canon, as well as also the rejection from the Christian church, who find itself with a different origin for mankind itself. Now, the angel described by Enoch, like I said, they are different. The characteristic of these figures makes us think of them as corporeal, easily recognizable in their morphology, often described as watchers with a crystal face. Could this refer to beings that are wearing maybe space suits that is possible. Enoch is a source of unusual and embarrassing stories, definitely for the, let's say, institutional theological interpretation, which tends to conclude that prophets' writings are figurative or mythological. Little of what is reported by this, let's say, inconvenient prophet is suitable for a consideration of a religious and spiritual nature. We seem to instead see things which would struggle not to find a almost ufological, okay, and which we invite you to read in their entirety. So each of you can develop their own opinion. So the Book of Enoch is something that definitely needs to be read. It tells the stories of these 200 watchers or angels sent to watch over humanity. These watchers conspired to commit sins by taking human women as wives and having children with them. They also taught humans many skills relating to the different disciplines. They also brought certain kind of magic. So magic seems to be actually connected with their arrival on earth. God condemned these fallen angels for their actions and assigned archangels to confine them to Tartarus until their final judgment. God tasked these archangels to deal with the rebellious fallen angels. He also instructed the archangels to show Enoch, the main character in the Book of Enoch, what will happen to watchers and their offsprings. In the process, different archangels show Enoch the workings of creation, but all of this will end up with Noah's flood. It will end up with a punishment against these giants. We conclude with a last consideration on Enoch and his scarce presence in the Bible, returning to the above-mentioned verse of Genesis 5:24. Then he was no more, because God took him away. Focus on the ascension of the patriarch, which is meant to have happened before the death of Jesus. In the early centuries of the church, an episode of this kind would have caused problems for the nascent Christian doctrine. The ascension of a man before Christ is not something that maybe Christians wanted. That seems to be maybe the more obvious reason, but it's not really what I think it's the reason. At one point, though, there is a guy who signed himself with the code name 007. He worked for Queen Elizabeth I. His name was John Dee. John Dee worked at the creation of an Enochian dictionary, and this is the seal for the communication with those angels. Though those angels were fallen angels, and so in a way he was communicating with demons. Those fallen angels that he, it was two people. There was John Dee, and there was his career. It was Edward Kelly. Together, before they eventually will part ways after trying to exchange wives and big scandal. But basically, Aleister Crowley claimed to be a reincarnation of Edward Kelly. When Aleister Crowley opens the gates of hell, like I described in volume 9 of my Confessions, and that happens in the same period in which Hollywood is established, we have basically this whole synchronicity of events that will lead us to where we are right now. So the reverse engineering that they are talking about, which is in a way maybe it's like they gave us all this and we are using it right now to communicate to you. But in return, of course, they are building around us a digital prison. And this needs to be understood. But of course, will the politicians participating at this hearing understand certain concepts? The danger of certain concepts In regards to this subject in particular, I discussed in Volume 4 of my Confessions John Dee, his role, and of course the role of Enochian magic. And, you know, this could bring us all the way to Volume 11, because in reality, in Volume 11, I discuss Sidney Gottlieb, who is one of the protagonists of Volume 11, saying that he explored the world of black magic and harnessed the forces of darkness and challenged the concept that the inner reaches of the mind are beyond reach. It's something he was doing with the CIA, with the infamous program MK Ultra that had all these sub-projects, and some of them were dealing in the darker side, not only of psychology, but even of magic. So regarding John Dee, his role seems to be a role of preparing for people like Crowley that will take advantage of that language to then open the gates of hell, because he uses the Enochian language to go with Victor Neuburg, sodomize him in the desert, do that black magic ritual, and of course evoke Choronzon. And in fact, in Volume 4 of my Confessions here, I explain through the words of this expert occult scholar and author of the popular critically acclaimed Necronomicon series, Llewellyn. This guy is basically Donald Tyson, a Canadian. And he says one thing. I mean, of course, this author is a Thelemite, so he's a follower of Aleister Crowley. He believes that Crowley has a leading role. He says, John Dee never received the signal to conduct the apocalypse working in his lifetime. It was to be reserved for another century and another man. That man was Aleister Crowley. Then Aleister Crowley will initiate those people here in California. Those people in California will go here in the Mojave Desert. They will open more these gates that Crowley started to open. And of course, they will come through. And at that point, we had the Roswell accident, other accidents, and the start of this reverse engineering that is being discussed today at this second Congress hearing.
There's some whistleblowers. Mr. Elizondo, what is your last position with the federal government?
Sir, I was the Director of National Programs Special Management Staff, managing a White House Special Access Program on behalf of the National Security Council.
How would you characterize UAPs?
An enigma, sir, and a frustration. We're talking about technologies that can outperform anything we have in our inventory. And if this was an adversarial technology, this would be an intelligence failure eclipsing that of 9/11 by an order of magnitude.
Are there classified Department of Defense materials related to UAPs that you believe could be safely disclosed to the public without compromising national security?
Yes, sir, I do. I would never, ever try to endorse providing some sort of information that could compromise what we call a blue force technology or capability. But I do believe there's a lot of information regarding this topic, and I've been very vocal about it, that should be shared not only with the public, but most importantly, with members of Congress.
Are you familiar with my friend David Grush?
Absolutely, sir. I had the privilege and honor of working with him myself several years ago at U.S. Space Force.
Last year, as you know, he testified that the U.S. has run a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Are there UAP programs operating without proper congressional oversight?
100%.
What are they?
Unfortunately, sir, I would have to have that conversation in a closed session.
I know you said that, and a lot of people are frustrated with those kind of answers, but we're asking those kind of questions so you all know what the heck we're up against. You also mentioned in your opening statement that the Pentagon's Public Affairs Office employs a psychological operations officer as the singular point of contact for UAP-related inquiries. Why the heck would they do that?
So that's a great question. I would ask the Pentagon. There's a long history here of that individual providing misleading and false information to the public through various news outlets and media outlets in order to discredit this topic. I've personally been victim to it. We have the documentation to substantiate where this information has been absolutely inaccurate, that has been provided time and time again. And it turns out that that individual was also working with former leadership of Arrow at the time as well.
And we punish them by giving them multi-million dollars more than they ask for every year.
So psychological operations to stop the veracity of these claims and maybe punish even people like Grush, who came out and made those astonishing revelations. This is very important here. In 2002, the British newspaper, the famous tabloid, the Sunday Telegraph, reported how the Vatican had banned the veneration of certain angels that do not appear in the text of the Bible, like, for example, Uriel, but many others also. Now, this happens, I mean, the news report said that the early church had excluded the book attributed to the Old Testament prophet and patriarch Enoch. So in 2002, still the Vatican wanted to stop and kind of lift the veil on top of certain names and on the fact that there is this, of course, unauthorized book, this book of Enoch. That then, like I said, it's not the only one, because we find there's also another couple of books of Enoch that followed in the Apocryphal series. Now, who are the watchers, the fallen angels that the early church and the modern Vatican is so concerned with? Genesis 6:1-4 says, when man began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the Son of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and took them wives of all which they chose. Traditionally, this is kind of like overseen, even if it's present in Genesis, which is a canon book. I mean, it's not some apocrypha. Now, the watchers are the ones who watch, the ones who were supposed to be in charge. These are the Ben Elohim, the fallen angels. We also know them with the name Grigori. And Grigori then touches me personally.
Yeah, I was going to say, isn't that your name?
Yes, in the ancestry, my ancestry, of course, I am the Marquis de Grigori. De Grigori, because, of course, the descendants became then the aristocracy, the royal families, and their bloodlines in some way. Now, we are, of course, often we are remembered also of the importance of the work of Zecharia Sitchin, that also connects the Anunnaki to all this. The Anunnaki is part of this whole thing. And so I wanted Christy to read this about their technology, the technology of the Anunnaki, from a book by Massimiliano Caranzani.
Okay, their technology. Traces of Anunnaki technology have reached us in an incredible number of texts, most of which are considerably holy, but also in artistic depictions of humans from all eras and places on Earth. We will begin by looking at the concrete evidence that has reached us that proves that they are irrefutable existence beyond reasonable doubt. Our planet is full of evidence each of us has had the chance to know from our very first days at school.
I want to interrupt a second, because for those who have just tuned in, the Anunnaki, the Watchers, the Nephilim are all groups of beings from ancient texts that scholars debate still if they are connected or not. But the Anunnaki then from the Epic of Gilgamesh, that we know has elements of Noah's flood. We have the Watchers from the Book of Enoch. We have the Nephilim from Genesis. And it seems like, according to Genesis, the Nephilim are basically, the Anunnaki and the Nephilim seems to be the same thing, the same beings. And for this reason, please, Christy, continue.
Okay. I might be reading something I don't know. Our planet is full of evidence each of us has had the chance to know from our very first days at school. We have never put together and reconstructed the full picture that sheds light on a whole chapter of our history. What could have survived for millennia and be able to bring us irrefutable proof of the presence of extremely advanced technology in the past, used by unknown builders and now forgotten? I am obviously talking of stone and the megaliths that were created with it, showing mystical geometries on the surface of the earth. The whole planet is full of architectural creations that come from such a past so remote it is completely indecipherable and forgotten. However, they all have some fundamental things in common. 1. They are colossal creations, megaliths of such size that moving them would be a challenge even today, if not completely impossible. The architecture, engineering, and construction of many of these megaliths is inexplicable to this day and often not replicable with the technologies available to us. In their proportions and alignment, all of these works show clear signs of incredible astronomical, geographical, and mathematical knowledge. No, this is number 4. We do not know when or who built these massive constructions, and we rarely know the reason for which they were built either. And number 5, these constructions have a common imprint and show that they were built by the same people, despite the fact that the civilizations they are attributed to geographically have never had any documented contact with each other before modern times.
Now,
like the pyramids.
Yes, like the pyramids, like the Sphinx, and many other things, which we could eventually go into the research of, but of course we don't have the time now. But for the Illuminati, in the esoteric Luciferian tradition, there is a special elite order of angelic beings that have been created by God to be basically earthly shepherds of this of the first primitive humans. The first primitive humans, how were created? Were they created as we know to be the image of God? No, so this image of God, were they actually Adam's manipulated genes? Was it like they were somehow a product of a scientific achievement, a little bit like Dolly the sheep? In 1997, the world was shocked by what was considered the experiment of the century, and that was Dolly the sheep. I mean, everybody remembers on TV it appeared. She was the first mammal officially born from a cloning procedure. Among all the religious representatives, the Jewish ones seem strangely to accept the news with the least alarm. The newspaper L'Unità in Italy ran an interview with Rabbi Egael Safran, in charge of medical ethics and Hebrew law at the University of Jerusalem, under the heading, and this was the heading, guys, in the newspaper, cloning. Cloning, it's in the Bible. Now, it was la clonazione, c'è già nella Bibbia. In this interview, the journalist invited Safran to explain what position the halakhic authorities, the rabbis in charge of interpreting modern reality in light of rules fixed by scripture and Jewish tradition, take with regards to this revolutionary biotechnology and its possible future application on human beings. The interview focus on the bioethical, of course, implications of it all, tied to the cloning procedure of Dolly the sheep and the eventual usage of reproductive means. To a specific statement made by the journalist, in this possibilistic attitude, traditional Hebrew culture seems to rediscover something very ancient, an idea that has been with them from its origin. With Safran gave a very interesting answer. Guys, he said, it is true. You just have to remember how Adam and Eve came to life. Cloning and genetically modifying embryos, I mean, it doesn't seem like, I understand. For us today, the fact that we could be the product of a cloning is definitely
but God doesn't
shocking.
like that, right?
No,
I mean, God wouldn't like that.
But it
very
will be the
much.
cloning made by God. So it will be a holy cloning, let's say, no?
Cloning himself.
Cloning, and of course there is different hypotheses, but clone individuals are following a procedure that does not involve typical insemination. This provokes dissent from, of course, dogmatic theology, which postulates the creation of a soul with the first cell of a potential individual at the moment of insemination. Any animal cloning is a reality now. It's been for a few years. Thanks to the progress of technology, anybody who wants his cat, dog, or whatever cloned, they can have a copy of such animals. But of course, human cloning seems an hypothesis that is very controversial, to say the least. And also Adam and even a special human lineage. So in the first chapters, we see Genesis, what brings us. But at this point, we are meant to understand a special elite, a divine prime directive interfered in a revolution and brought us where we are now. Most of the information we have on the Watchers and their activities come from the Book of Enoch, the first book. And in the Orthodox Bible, the prophet Enoch from the Hebrew ENOCH or instructor is a mysterious figure. He is described as the son of Cain, the first murderer, and the first city built by his father is named after him. You have Cain and Abel, you have this confrontation between the two brothers. And further on in Genesis 5:18, several generations later, Enoch is named as the son of Jared, and it's during its lifetime that the Watchers either arrive or incarnate in human bodies. So this is though where we are now. We have discussed today, as you can see in exploring the Illuminati Occult, the possibility that these fallen angels, because you see, when you're talking about the fallen angels in the Book of Enoch, the figure of Lucifer is called Samyaza. Samyaza is the fallen angel of the apocryphal Abrahamic traditions this way, but also present in Manichaeism as the leader of the Watchers. Manichaeism is probably the largest Gnostic sect still that survived, that was founded by the very revered prophet Mani. So this Samyaza, it's present, and Samyaza is portrayed as the leader of a band of angels, the son of God or Watchers, the Grigori, who rebel to God. But without them, maybe we will not have humanity as we know now, because they are also the ones who brought us a lot of the technology that we use since ancient times. And so we're talking here about the basics that distinguish us from the more primitive Neanderthal, or even before that. Now, Nephilim, it's translated as giants in the King James translation of the book of Genesis. And we have, though, I mean, these references also that bring us all the way to the Babylonian Talmud, that contains a singular mention of the name Samyaza, and this also is very important in regards to Jewish tradition. However, it seems to me that the Satan figure, which is Samyaza basically, and the way that is described in so much detail, and the fact that it's described as mating with the daughters of men, has created definitely a problem for both Christianity and for Judaism. Aside from in Ethiopia, where there is one of the most ancient copies of the book of Enoch that is kept on top of a mountain by an old monk that is always there.
Where?
In Ethiopia, on top of a mountain, there is conserved a very holy copy of this book, and they're very holy about it. And to get to that mountain, to get into that cave, to watch is very. I want to always go there.
I was going to ask, did you go?
No, I
know
won't.
you haven't
I
been
won't.
to
No. I've been to Egypt, but then you have also the fact that Uza, which is another name for Samyaza, though, is the tutelary angel of the Egyptians. So it was the angel that protected the Egyptians. And before the fall, Samyaza was of the rank of Seraphim. It was of a high rank, the celestial of heavenly rank of most holies in Judaism. And the term will also play a role subsequent in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So we go from a villain to then, of course, something that preceded his fall. And his fall, of course, even the fall of Lucifer and Satan, always presented us this as being very, very holy in front of God, the most beautiful of angels, the most powerful. And in fact, to this day, even the archangels who have to go and fight Satan are very much kind of like, you can't eliminate Satan. But then we go to the explanation. You will not have good without evil in this universe. You will not have evil without good. You will have the annihilation of both these things, the yin and the yang. So I hope that you understand when we are talking here about these UFOs, these WAP, what are they, and discussing them in a context which is, of course, very much physical, very much pragmatic. At times, you lose the reference from what these things might be, and the reference that in any case, even if they are evil or even if they're fallen, they're still not to be, if we are reverse engineering from these beings and we think that we can get away with it, then, as I explained in volume 9 of my Confessions, we are idiots. And the result will be, of course, the coming age of the Antichrist with the quantum computers and the quantum prince of darkness taking over the show. This is the thesis I bring forward in volume 9 of my Confessions. Let's go back to the Congress.
That you mentioned in your opening statement on an email you received from the operations officer of the Fleet Forces Command regarding unknown objects almost colliding with U.S. military planes. Did anyone respond with knowledge of what the objects were?
I received no response, sir.
Did the exercise get canceled?
The exercise did not get canceled.
Why do you think the commander of Fleet Forces operations officer never discussed the incident again?
Sir, I'm speculating because I didn't have an exchange with him, but I believed it to be part of a special access program, the information and the video, which we have known now it was, and he realized he couldn't share that openly with the recipients of the email, and therefore the email was pulled from everybody's account.
Again, tell us what happened to the email from the commander of Fleet Forces.
The day after I received it, and all the other recipients received it, which were all the subordinate commanders of U.S. Fleet Forces, so 1- and 2-star admirals, including strike group commanders, the email was wiped or deleted from our accounts,
Okay.
and then no one talked about it.
All right. Have you specifically had any experience with submersible objects?
Sir, I've no personal experience, but I've had witnesses on submarines come to me and say they've seen on sonar data.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah,
how would
USOs.
how would you characterize those, and how do they move?
The one instance that was revealed to me was in the 80s on a nuclear-powered submarine, a ballistic missile submarine, that the object exhibited the characteristics of a Russian torpedo in terms of its speed of movement and closing rate with the submarine, and then it slowed and followed the submarine slowly in its wake for a period of minutes, and then rapidly exited the scene. And nothing that we know of and technology-wise could replicate that.
And the speed of these objects was faster than anything that we have or anybody else has that would be manned. Is that correct?
It was on the order
Underwater.
of a torpedo. So
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. But as it exited,
Well, I don't exactly know how fast a torpedo is, but I expect it does better than my old outboard Scott Atwater, so I'll take that as a yes.
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Have you experienced any experience with the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, ARROW?
Yes, Congressman, as I mentioned previously, and I have met with them.
Okay. You heard Mr. Alexander describe psychological operations for those contacting the Department of Defense about UAPs. You mentioned a similar influence operation by ARROW. Why are federal agencies invested in running information operations about UAPs if they do not exist?
Yes, sir. But I'll make a statement on ARROW's behalf. They have new leadership. The office has reached out to me to meet again, and I take that as a good faith effort, and we'll see where that goes.
Thank you, Chair Lady. I've run over. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tennessee. I would now like to recognize Mr. Higgins.
And we are live from Palm Springs, California, with a new Exploring the Illuminati Occult series, The Fallen Angels here of ENOCH, as the U.S. Congress holds this UFO hearing that confirms, of course, most of the things which I wrote about in the last few years. Christy, from Volume 4, I would like you to read this part here.
Okay. Once the demons have taken up residence, we will be powerless to prevent them from turning our thoughts and actions toward chaotic and destructive ends. These apocalyptic spirits will set person against person and nation against nation, gradually increasing the madness and chaos in human society until at last the full horror of revelation has been realized upon the stage of the world. We are living that right now.
And those who have asked me which egregores and which lesser Elohim entities do the Masonic ritual contact, please read Invisible Master, The Puppeteer's Hidden Power. That together with all the other books we cited today, Volume 4 and of course Volume 9 are the books I highly recommend. Yes, but then we have those who prefer to have some great
Well, if you want to
food.
eat.
Zagami Family Cookbook, guys, before we
What did
leave
I
you.
make today, Maria?
Oh, today you made something fantastic.
I usually make pizza on Saturdays, and now I made pasta today.
Oh,
so.
fresh.
The fettuccine, that one, the Sunday sauce one. Is that the Sunday sauce?
No. This is another one. The fresh fettuccine were fantastic. I mean, everything is fantastic here. Yeah, I mean, when I read this book, I just have to ask Chris. We need to make this the pasta with peas. I love the pasta with peas. It's so fantastic. The pasta with vodka, the pasta with pistachios and prawns. Guys, You want to eat like a king? The Zagami Family Cookbook is available now, authentic Italian cooking, and is another way of supporting our show.
Yes.
I hope you liked a new format here on Wednesday, as well as our cognitive warfare that seems to have gone very well on Saturday. We will continue this Saturday. It's 2 times a week, thanks to our sponsors.
Yeah,
Casey,
thank
who were
you.
the sponsors this week?
Daniel Estes and Bruce Kodish.
Oh, and
everyone. Thank you guys so much. You guys rock the Casbah.
you guys rock the Casbah. Thank you so much. And of course, for Wednesday, we go back to our old.
Is this the Daphne Cobb? Oh, no.
No.
Oh,
That's what we did at the opening.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
No. We go
I
back
said I would dance with the president. The president. I get them dancing.
Here comes the devil. Oh, here comes the devil. Oh, here comes the
And
devil.
like I
Oh, the
have
devil with the
announced
devil says
this
I.
book that came out in December 2019, we're going towards an American Renaissance 2.0, because I said either we have the Civil War or either we have the Renaissance, and I guess we will have the Golden Age and the Renaissance with President Donald J. Trump.
With the devil says I. You're always giving me the dickens, telling me that life's no easy pickings. But just as long as I have fun, why the devil with the devil says I. You can have your social teas and bingo for your fun. But the things I like to do, you stop me one by one. Now even if you make me stronger, that ain't gonna make me live no longer. So even if I go to the devil with the devil says I. Look out for the devil, look out for the devil. Oh, the devil with the devil says I.